Hey guys, what's up? This is Dingo Crikey here with another commentary video. This time I'm going to be discussing a general Transformers discussion topic. If you are interested in discussion and commentary that pertains more specifically to Transformers 5, the Transformers Age of Extinction toy line, or the upcoming Transformers Robots in Disguise cartoon, then check out my playlist and channel where you can also find over 20 of my Transformers stop motion videos, some of which are previewed here. But for this video, I'm going to be discussing whether or not Megatron is a boring villain. Now initially, you might be thinking either, what? He's Megatron, how could he be boring? Or, yes, I know exactly what you're saying. Either way you look at it, I think it's a pretty legitimate question, seeing as Megatron is obviously one of the most well-known Transformers characters. And whether as Megatron or Galvatron, he has appeared as the primary villainous character in most Transformers media. But is Megatron or Galvatron really that great of a character? Or is it time for Transformers to take a shift from what has always been done and come up with a new villain for the films, a series, or maybe even a time period in the franchise as a whole? As mentioned, Megatron has made an appearance in a ton of Transformers media, obviously. Almost every major Transformers toy line since Generation 1 has featured at least one Megatron figure, and especially in the movie toy lines, and I believe even in the Prime toy line, there are usually multiple Megatron figures released, and not only like Legends class and Fast Action Battlers, but in the first films line, we actually would see a Leader and a Voyager class Megatron, and then duplicates of those figures. Every major, non-exclusively Japanese Transformers cartoon has also featured Megatron as a villain, though I think Rescue Bots is an exception, but I haven't watched the series, so I'm not 100% sure. You guys can tell me in the comment section below if you want. To my knowledge, though, it hasn't been revealed whether or not Megatron will be the bad guy in the upcoming Robots in Disguise cartoon, but there seems to be a lot of speculation that he will be returning as Galvatron to become the main antagonist during the second half of the show. In one form or another, Megatron has, of course, appeared in all of the live-action films. And though the extent of his role does vary, it usually comes out to be Optimus Prime's rival in some way or the other. Either way, he always does end up having some pretty big role, even in Age of Extinction. And despite his numerous appearances, Megatron pretty much always has the same basic character qualities from one series to the next. While there is some variation as to whether he's a calm or collective dude, or loud and raving, mysterious or shadowy, or upfront and simple, and sometimes he's funny, like in Beast Wars, and then in Beast Machines it was a total turnaround and he's kind of a scary villain. Either way, there always seems to be core qualities that build up Megatron's character. He's pretty much always obsessed with gaining power. He usually wants to dominate all civilization, whether Earth or Cybertron, crushing everything that gets in his way, abusing his teammates and his enemies. Basically, he wants to enslave the citizens of Cybertron and basically lives by the motto, peace through tyranny. For us who've seen the multiple Transformers series, we do know that sometimes Megatron has been shown to have somewhat of a side, or maybe even a change of heart, or change of spark, depending on how you look at it, towards the end of the show. But for the most part, Megatron's pretty much the same character. Someone could say, well, he gets upgraded abilities, he becomes Galvatron sometimes, but, this doesn't really contribute as character development. His personality never really changes, except, like I said, maybe some little things in a few of the series, and he has no deep or believable motivations for the things he does. I do believe there was a Megatron's Origins comic released a couple of years back, but I've heard that even that doesn't really give us a whole lot of relatability with Megatron's character. And I'm sure you could argue, he's a Transformers character, he's not a human character, so we're not supposed to relate to him the same way we would relate to a person character, and also he is the main villain, so in most media, you don't get villains who are as relatable as good guy characters. I think that's unfortunate personally, but I'm sure some people would disagree. But even with these deep, more, I guess you could say, human aspects to the character put aside, we do basically see the same thing going on with Megatron's character in every single series. You can have a bad guy who's just, I don't want to say bad for the sake of being bad necessarily, but just very bad guyish, doesn't have a whole lot of relatable qualities. but still, you can have a lot of variation within that type of character. I'll use an example that kind of pertains to Star Wars and the expanded universe, but you guys don't really have to have information on the expanded universe to get this, at least hopefully not. Basically, in the original trilogy, our bad guys are like Grand Moff Tarkin and the Emperor, but Darth Vader's like the primary bad guy. Even though the Emperor's on top of everything, Darth Vader's the main one at the forefront. So basically we have Darth Vader, who's ruthless, cold, he treats his people like crap. I mean, if someone tries to give him advice even, he doesn't like to hear it. He, chokes people for failing. All that kind of great stuff Darth Vader does. That makes him such a memorable bad guy. I mean, he's dark, mysterious, is always in the suit, has the deep voice, all those kind of traits. And he's really just, until we get the backstory and see the end of Return of the Jedi, kind of a ruthless leader. Yeah, in the Star Wars book trilogy written by Timothy Zahn, I believe in the 90s, we're introduced to a new main villain character called Grand Admiral Thrawn. Currently, I'm only halfway through the second book of the trilogy, but I really, really enjoy this character so far, and I think a lot of what makes him so good is that he is such a different villain from Darth Vader. For one thing, he isn't a Sith, he isn't some big guy in a black cloak looking mysterious. No, he's just like a very, very skilled military leader. He learns how to defeat his enemy through things like looking at the culture's art, psychologically profiling them almost. He's very calm and collective, unlike Darth Vader or Megatron, who are prone to angry outbursts and that kind of thing. And he's very tactical. He doesn't just have his people doing all the work for him, sort of like Megatron and Darth Vader once again, who kind of just will order Knockout or the nearest Imperial officer to do all the thinking for them. And also, he's kind of a likable character as a person, at least in my opinion. He doesn't just reprimand his people for giving him advice or something like that. He takes it into consideration, even though none of them are nearly as smart as him, so probably with a grain of salt. He's still ruthless and will deal out harsh punishments, but overall he earns the respect of his people and, commands them in a very organized way. Basically, he's a very, very different villain from Darth Vader. And I think that's what makes the book series so exciting to read, in part, is because it is a lot different. I mean, a lot of the elements are still the same, you still have the same universe, but that villain being a different type of character really helps it be a lot more of an interesting story, and I really think that's what Transformers is lacking at this point. Megatron is always the villain in Transformers, and he is pretty much always the same character. Even if there is some more interesting villains, such as Lockdown in the movies, or even in Transformers Animated, or Starscream in Transformers Cybertron, they're really quickly trumped out by Megatron, and we return back to the same old story of, Megatron just wanting power, wanting to dominate the universe, and his same attitude, just, same motivations, nothing really unique about it. And I think that's a big problem. I think some people might argue this, and maybe there are more legitimate arguments. If you can come up with one, leave it in the comment section below. But I think a lot of it just comes down to the fact that a lot of people are afraid of change coming to Transformers. They don't want their childhood being destroyed, which I don't see how it would be destroyed by this, but they would theorize that in some way. Or they think Megatron simply has to be the villain in every Transformers series, pretty much because he always has been, or because they think certain characters are essential to Transformers. If you want to hear my thoughts on that topic more specifically, you can search Transformers without Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, and you should be able to find my video pretty easily. But in short, I don't think the way Transformers works. I don't think it's bound to specific characters to tell a good story. It's more about the concept, the universe, the idea of transforming sentient robots, all that kind of stuff. So for me, yes, I do think Megatron is a pretty boring villain, and at this point he has been really, really overdone. If you have a villain like Megatron and he's the bad guy in like one of 3 shows, that's okay. I mean, for me, that might be pushing it a little bit, but, overall, I would be fine with that. But Megatron being a villain every single time and having the same motivations, the same basic personality, I mean, his voice actor changes a little bit, but that's about the only interesting thing we get other than maybe a cool toy out of it. But personally, I would really, really like to see something different. I mean, if Galvatron's going to be the eventual villain in Robots in Disguise, that isn't that big of a deal to me, because personally, I don't have very high hopes for the show. I mean, it might be okay, but I wouldn't want them to waste the opportunity on Robots in Disguise. But rather than just having a villain who's different than Megatron in the way he handles himself and name, character qualities, design, I would prefer having a villain with a much deeper motivation, a lot more background, and, really have him be a lot more of a relatable type of character. Personally, I wouldn't mind seeing a series where maybe Megatron is another character in the series, just as some other Decepticon, but have the villain who comes into confrontation with the Autobots a lot more often, who gets a lot more of the focus, be a totally different character. Maybe something kind of like Sentinel Prime in the films, like someone who we think is just a bad dude at first, but then we find out there's a lot more to his character, like maybe he was formerly an Autobot and believed in things like freedom through free will and, having hope in sentient beings, all of that kind of stuff. And, just through the Cybertronian War and watching the way society on Cybertron constantly went downhill, that maybe through some turn of events he ends up on Earth and, thinks there might be more hope in humanity and just protects humans for a little while, but then basically finds out that the humans have turned on the Transformers, they might kill some of his other Autobot soldiers, something like that, and ultimately he just totally has lost hope and brings him to the point where he is at the beginning of the series, seeming just like a ruthless, villainous character. But all this backstory is revealed about him, so he's kind of at the point where he does follow the Decepticon mindset of sort of a peace through tyranny mentality. But even if he doesn't believe it in a logical way, have him still kind of have in the back of his mind that the Autobots are morally right, but he just can't follow through with that mindset. And maybe the other characters even confront him with this at a certain point, basically that he knows what's right deep down inside, but he just doesn't want to suffer through it anymore, and basically, maybe some of the Autobots think they can convert him back, and some of the other ones are just so furious with this guy that they don't give a crap, they just want to kill him. Maybe some of the other ones just don't really care. He's just the enemy combatant, and that's the way they see him. I guess that was a lot of exposition for just one type of character, but I do think that is just one route they could go with having a different villain who is not Megatron. Like I said, maybe Megatron could be in the series, but he doesn't have to have that major role like he pretty much does throughout every single Transformers cartoon. So to wrap things up, yes, I do think Megatron has become pretty much a boring villain in Transformers. It might sound like blasphemy, but that is pretty much my opinion on it. No, I don't hate Megatron as a bad guy. I don't think there is no room left for him in the Transformers universe. I just would prefer to see at least for 2 Transformers series, or at very, very least 1 Transformers cartoon, where we don't have to have Megatron as a main villain, to open up an opportunity to have a way more interesting character and take the story in a bit of a different direction. If you have a former Autobot as the main bad guy, sort of like the character I described, that would definitely put the Autobots at odds with his ideology, and, they would probably have to face some of the challenges he faced and, ultimately make the right decisions and not turn away from the Autobot ways and protecting humanity, other Transformers, all of that. Anyways, that's my thoughts on it. You guys can leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you agree that Megatron has become really, really overdone and kind of boring in Transformers media? Or do you think this is total crazy talk and you want Megatron in Transformers forever, no matter what? And if you had your own ideas on who could replace Megatron as a villain, you leave that in the comment section as well. I'd be interested in reading them. This wasn't a viewer-requested topic, but it was one I just decided on doing anyways. Still, I have a lot of viewer suggestions that I've been thinking about, and I do plan on doing videos for those. So, stay tuned for more Transformers commentary videos. If you're interested in more, you can go to my playlist and channel. And as I said in the beginning of the video, you can also check out my Transformers stop-motion videos there. Thanks for watching, and have a good one, guys.